The quiet student, a silent learner, speaks up and shines. In a small town stood a middle school with red brick walls and tall windows. Every morning, the classrooms were full of noise. Children laughed, talked, and shouted as they entered. Teachers tried to bring order, calling for silence, but the energy of young students was always strong. Among these lively voices, there was one boy who hardly ever spoke. His name was Daniel. Daniel was 12 years old. He had short brown hair and big round glasses. He always sat in the back of the classroom, quiet and calm. While other children raised their hands quickly to answer questions, Daniel kept his hands folded on the desk. He listened carefully, took neat notes, and finished his homework on time, but he almost never spoke. Some children thought Daniel was shy, others thought he had nothing to say. But the truth was different. Daniel loved to learn. He read books every evening at home. He remembered details, facts, and stories, but he felt nervous about speaking in front of others. His voice was soft, and he worried that people might laugh at him or ignore him, so he stayed silent. One teacher, Mrs. Green, noticed Daniel's quiet nature. She saw his perfect homework, his careful notes, and the deep thought in his eyes. She often wondered, does he know the answers? He never speaks, but I think he understands more than anyone else. She decided to give him time. She did not force him to speak, but she waited for the right moment. One day, the school announced a big event. It was the annual knowledge contest. Students would answer questions about history, science, geography, and literature. Classes competed against each other, and the winning class would get a special trip to the city museum. Excitement filled the halls. Children practiced with friends, teachers prepared lists of questions, and teams began to form. In Daniel's class, the teacher asked, "Who wants to join the contest team?" Many hands went up. Everyone wanted to show their knowledge. But Daniel kept his eyes down. Silent as always, Mrs. Green looked at him and thought he would be perfect. But how can I convince him? The team started to practice every afternoon. One day, when the other students struggled to answer a history question, Daniel whispered the answer softly to himself. Mrs. Green, who stood nearby, heard him. She smiled and said gently, "Daniel, could you say that again, but louder?" Daniel froze for a moment, but then, with a deep breath, he said, "The answer is the Great Wall of China." Everyone looked at him with surprise. The answer was correct. From that day, Mrs. Green encouraged him more. She asked him small questions in class, and slowly he began to speak a little more. His classmates were surprised by how much he knew. Instead of laughing, they started to admire him. "Wow, Daniel is really smart," one boy whispered. For the first time, Daniel felt that his voice had value. When the contest day came, the school hall was decorated with banners and balloons. Students from every class sat together, waiting for their turn. Parents and teachers filled the seats. The atmosphere was full of excitement. Daniel's class team went on stage. At first, Daniel's hands shook. His heart beat fast. He thought, what if I make a mistake? What if I cannot speak? But then he remembered Mrs. Green's kind eyes and the way his classmates looked at him with respect. He whispered to himself, "I can do this." The contest began. The teacher asked questions about science, geography, and literature. Some questions were easy, and the team answered quickly. But then came a very difficult question. What is the name of the scientist who discovered electricity by flying a kite during a storm? The team members looked at each other. No one knew the answer. The audience became quiet. Daniel's mind worked fast. He remembered reading about it in a book one evening. Slowly, he raised his hand. The teacher nodded. Daniel's voice was shaky, but he spoke clearly. "Benjamin Franklin." A moment of silence followed. and then the teacher smiled. Correct! The audience clapped loudly. Daniel's face turned red, but inside he felt proud. Question after question, Daniel helped his team. He answered about the planets, famous authors, and world maps. His voice grew stronger with each word. His classmates looked at him with admiration. Some whispered, "He's amazing. We didn't know he could do this." Finally, the last question came. It was the hardest of all. What is the longest river in the world? The hall was silent. Daniel's team looked worried. Daniel closed his eyes and thought carefully. Then he spoke, "The Nile River." The teacher checked the answer and announced, "Correct. The winners are Daniel's class." The hall exploded with cheers. The classmates jumped up, hugging each other. Mrs. Green had tears in her eyes. She looked at Daniel and said, "I always knew you could shine." Daniel smiled, his heart full of joy. For the first time, he was not the quiet boy in the back. He was the student who spoke up and helped his class win. From that day on, Daniel was still quiet, but not silent. He continued to listen carefully and study hard, but now he also spoke when he wanted to share. He learned that his voice was important and that courage grows when you take the first step. His classmates respected him, and he respected himself. And so, the quiet student became the shining star of the school, not because he shouted the loudest, but because he found the courage to let his voice be heard.